Well, it's 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and it's time to get started with today's presentation of the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A session. I'm Dave McCormick from Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined, as I am most Wednesdays, by Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solution engineer here at Alpha Software. Dion will give a presentation of just some tips and techniques that he's seen at the beginning of today's session, and then after that, it's open to questions. So two things you should know. First is that we would really love to see your questions, and go ahead and type them into the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. The second is that the session will be recorded, and you can find a copy of the recording at videos.alphasoftware.com. So let's get started. Dion, let me go ahead and take you off mute. Hello, Dion. Are you there?
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter, so you should see a dialog box. And I can see your screen.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as we do each week. Again, this is about helping our new and advanced developers really get launched and also take advantage of all the amazing capabilities in the Alpha Anywhere tool. So what I want to ask people, if you don't mind, take the time to give us some questions. That helps drive our agenda and drive what we're trying to do here, which is provide you great data, help you find where you want, information and tips and techniques are located at. And as always, you can enter them in by going to your GoToWebinar control panel, select questions and enter it there. Also, you can always send them ahead of time and allow us to prepare for it at guides@alphaanywhere.com. That's guides@alphaanywhere.com, and that email address allows us to gather those up and put together some really fun presentations.
Correction, that should be guides@alphasoftware.com.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're thinking Alpha Anywhere. Yeah, okay.
But if you don't want your questions answered, go ahead and send them to the other address. You know, if they're not that important. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. So, and you don't be mad at us. Yeah. Oh, great. Thanks. I took the time to write this up and they ignored me. Wonderful guys. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking about a little technique, little trick tip that I use to help me accelerate my productivity. That's one thing you'll notice is that the Alpha Anywhere development platform is a very rich and mature platform. It has been in development for years, and over time the team has done a phenomenal job in regards of adding just all these little kind of enhancements to allow your development to move faster, happen quicker, and to take care of things in a much faster way. Again, one of the hallmarks of the Alpha Anywhere platform is how fast you can develop very complex database-driven web and mobile applications. So with that, I'm going to go and show you a couple quick little techniques. So the first technique, I'm going to jump over here into my Alpha Anywhere development environment. And for folks that are new to Alpha, again, this is our development environment running under Windows. In my case, just in case you see it, I run a Mac, but I have Parallels running it there. So you're going to see in here I'm at the Web Projects control panel, and I have all my different components on the left are the classifications of my different components. So I can see like my A5W pages, style sheets I have in here, JavaScript files, reports, etc. But I've already created a web component called Move JavaScript, and this is one of the things that it's one of those little time savers that I find that are very, very valuable in terms of development. So I have a real simple little demonstration here where I have a text box, and in that text box I have some default text, and then in this button I have a set of action JavaScript. So let's go ahead and show you how that works first. So I'm going to open up there, go in the full preview. While that's happening, Dave, just want to do a process check, make sure my sound is coming through okay, and my visuals are.
Yeah, it sure is. Yep, coming through.
Good, good. Wanted to make sure. So simple, I have a text box with some default text there, and I can click button here, and you'll notice that it throws up onto the screen a alert that says hello developers, which is the text in here. And so I'll go in and show you what that looks like. Let me go ahead and go here. Let's get in there. Okay. Okay, so we have our button right here and our text box. So I'm going to click on the text box, and then up here I have, you notice, a default value called hello developers. And then I have a button here that is a simple button, and I can say, you know, show message for the text on the button. But I can scroll down here, and you notice I have a little JavaScript here. And so I open it up here. Now, what we've shown before is we've been using what's called Action JavaScript, which is built into it. So let me go ahead and cut this out here and show you what Action JavaScript looks. So if I wanted to put in a little piece of code or have it do something like open a report, open a grid component, do an AJAX callback, I can do that within Action JavaScript. But I want to make sure everybody understands is that behind the scenes, all Action JavaScript is a set of JavaScript commands. And in fact, we have a full-featured, full-blown JavaScript text editor built into the system. So normally when you click on a button, let's say the click event, it's going to default to Action JavaScript. But then you'll notice a radio button where I can turn it into text mode, and you'll notice the bottom part of this changes, and in here now I have a regular JavaScript editor. So I'm going to paste in some JavaScript there. Now a couple things I'd like to mention about here, which are really, really powerful. One is that it's full-featured. It understands JavaScript syntax. So you'll notice that you have color coding, and this color coding is automatically handled by the text editor. It also has built into it the line numbering, so you can see the different line numbers, so when you're working on things, makes it easier to there. Another thing, and I kind of showed this before, and I'm not going to spend too much time into it, but in here we have a full set of essentially help capabilities. So as you're going to start out doing most of your things, and almost 100% in Action JavaScript. But then after a while, you're going to either figure out you need to do something a little different that's not encompassed in Action JavaScript, or you want to, once you kind of get to know Action JavaScript and know what you can do it, sometimes it's just faster to type in a JavaScript command and call it a day. Once you kind of understand there's probably about 10 commands that we use over and over and over in the system, you can end up typing it much faster than you can go through the point and click and putting those in there. But what I like to show people is down here we have a set of the JavaScript commands that are built in. So you'll notice in here we have var, and for people who are not familiar with JavaScript, don't freak out, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but I'm declaring a variable called test text, and in that I'm basically using an alpha command called dialogObject.getValue, which gets the value of, in this case, the text box. And then once I have that variable, I just use the JavaScript alert command to throw that up on the screen for the user here. But how did I know how to get this command right here? Well, once you get to know it, you'll kind of know these common sort of JavaScript commands. But you'll notice down here you have insert UX component method and other things. So I can click here, and it brings up a complete and total list of all the different JavaScript commands that are behind the scenes that Alpha has provided you to make your programming much faster. So most of them are involved with dialog objects, i.e. the UX component. But we also have some other ones that are involved with the map controls. So if you want to do some mapping, fancy mapping things, you can do that. We also have some items that are built in that do grids and lists. So there's a whole range and universe of all these capabilities that are available to you. And what's great is on the right-hand side, you have a description of what that command does, and you have examples so that you can simply copy that example to the clipboard, paste it in, make a few adjustments, you're on the way to go. And so I find, if you're doing something a little different, mostly you're going to use Action JavaScript. But if you're doing something a little different, you can use it and play with this. Once you kind of get to know it, it's less scary. It is code, but it's not that bad. It's like, think scripting versus really a full coding kind of scenario, though. So within that, I have a very simple set of commands here. So I'm going to copy this out, and I'm going to click Save. And again, let me run this where when I click this button, Show Message, whatever's in the test text box will be shown as alert to the user. So I can go in here, and then I can click Show Message, Hello Developers. And then I can go in there, Hello World. And nothing super exciting, but it takes whatever's in that dialog, puts it in that variable, and shows the message. Now let's say we want to make this a little more interesting. So let's say in this case, when I change this text box, when I exit out of this text box, I want to show that message. It could be firing off a validation or something like updating another control or something like that. So I'm just going to go down in here to the JavaScript for this test text box, and I'm going to go to what's called the onBlur event. And what the onBlur event is when a control loses focus, i.e. when you're in a control and you move out, it automatically fires this JavaScript. And so you can notice right here that when I clicked on blur, we actually saw a description of when this event fires. So you'll notice here it says the onBlur event fires when the control loses focus. And so you can click on any one of these in either of these JavaScripts, and it's going to tell you basically when this fires. So let's go ahead and go to the onFocus, and let's go ahead and edit that. I'm going to go in text mode and just paste this data in right there. So I go ahead and click Save. I'm going to go into Working Preview. I noticed that when I clicked there, it actually took it lost focus because of the click event, or the onBlur event happened. So it allows me to then fire in that situation. But maybe I don't want it to fire when it does an onBlur, but the only time I want this to fire is when the actual value of this control changes. Now, since I have a very simple piece of JavaScript, I can merely just go in here, cut this out of here, go to my let's say my onChange event here. Oh, it's onFocus. I put it on the wrong one. That's why I wanted to do this whole demo. This is an example. I screwed up, and I apologize. I didn't mean to do it, but this will play into my purpose of today's demonstration. You'll notice that I actually have this event firing not on the onBlur, but on the onFocus. And you'll notice that whenever this onFocus event fires when the control gets focused. So you'll notice, being an idiot that I am for this presentation, although on purpose, when I click on here, it gives focus to that and fires that message. But you know what? Hey, I don't want it to work there. So what I could do this is I could open up here, I could highlight this text, I could cut it out, I could go to my onBlur event, go to text mode and paste it and go through that process. But here's the trick, and this is really what I wanted to show you guys today. Don't be afraid to explore. There are some really cool features that are built into Alpha. So for instance, I screwed up. I want this onFocus JavaScript to be onBlur. So I can just go, I can click on onFocus, I can go to Menu, and there's a really cool thing here called Move JavaScript Code to a Different Event. So as you can see, there's a lot of really cool things in here. You can duplicate controls, you can copy controls, you can save selected controls in the library, and I'm going to talk about that at a future event here. You can load controls from the library, you can insert comments, you can print the comments, you got all these capabilities here. But the one I want to show today is that I screwed up. I have it on the onFocus, I want it on the onBlur. So instead of going through all the rigmarole of copying, deleting, pasting, and this and that, I just go to Menu, Move JavaScript Code to a Different Event. You'll notice that it's highlighting and showing right here, the source has onFocus. I want it to be on the onBlur event, and then you'll notice I've selected where it's coming from and where it's going to. I click OK, move code from source event to target event, and voila, you'll notice that the onFocus event now is empty. If I open it up, it's taken all the code out of there and removed it. And in this case, then, in the onBlur event, it's taken and pasted that code in there and put it from there. And again, this is a very simple situation where I just have a few little piece of code here. But there can be some pretty sophisticated things going on in these things over time. And this ability just to move it by doing a single command will save you a lot of time and effort. So now that I've done that, let's go into my live preview. And then I go to here, and then when I do the tab out, you'll notice that it fires the hello developer. So when I clicked in, you'll notice it doesn't fire it anymore because the onFocus event doesn't have anything going on. But now when I click tab and lose focus, i.e. onBlur, moving out of focus for that control, it fires this event right here. So I kind of made the mistake, even though not on purpose, but it helped what I wanted to do, was to show that in the case of this, you may have a situation where you accidentally put a set of JavaScript commands on a specific thing and you go, oh, that's not really where I wanted it. You could go through the whole rigmarole of cut, copy, paste, etc. Or you can use some of the built-in features within here of Menu. For instance, this case, move JavaScript controls to a different event. So I click there. It shows me where there's existing JavaScript, because you may have JavaScript on multiple locations. It shows you where you want to take it to. So if I wanted to move it back to the onFocus event, I go, boom, it's there. You go, oh, I don't want it on focus. Menu, move JavaScript code. Let's put it back to the onBlur. Or maybe I want it on the on change and on those pieces there. So I go on focus, now it goes to on change. So you'll notice it moved it from the on focus to on change. Now watch what happens if I go in the live preview and I click out. Notice it didn't fire because in this case I don't have the on there, but I'm going to change the value and hit exit, and you'll notice because I changed the value here, it triggered that on change event, and in this case fired that alert for me to see on the screen. So a couple things I want to get across is that built into Alpha is a very sophisticated, full-blooded JavaScript editor which has color coding, has built-in help to help you find these different commands that you will need to do over time. And again, this is a little more advanced. You'll usually start with Action JavaScript, but don't be scared. After a while, it's pretty easy to just copy and paste. You know, I could take this information, let's say this is something I do all the time, put on Evernote, and then whenever I want to do it again, I don't have to type this in there. I just copy it off Evernote and paste it in here and off to the races from that standpoint. And also, I wanted to show you that built into it are a lot of really cool sort of essentially productivity capabilities, and they're under these menus here. So you can see in this case, it's move a JavaScript code to a different event. And trust me, you start adding and using all these capabilities, you'll shave a minute here, a minute here, a minute here. Before you know it, you've really started to save a lot of productive time there. So very straightforward, very simple. Again, the goal I wanted to show you today is that there's a huge amount of little productivity tools built into it. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to go in and modify things and play with it. And you'll find more often than not that they've added some feature in there to make your life easier in terms of moving code, updating it, changing things, you know, just to make you more productive and your ability to generate things much quicker. I do want to cover this. I'm not going to cover it today because I want to leave a lot of time for Q&A, but we have another really key productivity tool called Save Selected Controls in Library, and next week I'll give you a full demonstration of that because you'll find that as a huge time saver. Because the reality is, even though you're doing multiple projects, often you tend to do the same core actions over and over again, and I want to show you some tricks on how to make that even more productive in the future. So with that, I'm going to go back in here. Make sure to enter those questions into the Q&A portion in the GoToWebinar control panel. And with that, I'll turn it back to Dave, who will be the master of ceremonies.
Excellent. So we do have a bunch of questions. Some I'm trying to sort through and get clarifications on, but let's start with the ones that are more straightforward. Here's a question here. So if you have a JavaScript function in a JS file, and you have that JS file in your Alpha Anywhere workspace, then do you have to do anything special to call that JavaScript function from a button click event?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. The answer is yes, but it's not very difficult. So for people who are kind of new to this domain, I want to take a step back. Obviously, JavaScript is important. JavaScript is what web browsers use to give interactivity and behavior. JavaScript is what gives mobile platforms. So whether you like it or not, eventually you're going to know JavaScript. And we do hide a lot of the JavaScript because of the action JavaScript. It really makes life easier. But over time, you're going to get more and more sophisticated, and you'll start using it. And very, very important is that over time, you're going to realize that Alpha, even though we have an extremely rich set of controls, I mean, you look at it, we have buttons, frames, embedded objects, we have different types of things, pick lists, images. There are third-party JavaScript libraries that you can acquire for little or nothing and include those into them to provide a new feature or capability. Like, for instance, I have a project now where they wanted to display an image, and in that image, they wanted the ability for you to zoom in, pan, and all those kind of things there. Well, that's not a native capability of our image control built into Alpha, but there is a very straightforward JavaScript library that allows you to put, you actually have a JavaScript library piece of code you can include in your project and then associate it with an image field, and then when it displays on the browser, the JavaScript library takes over and actually shows you, basically gives you the controls and manages that whole process for you. Very simple, very easy to integrate. So the thing you need to do first is that these things will ship with a JavaScript library, which is usually .js. So let me go ahead and I'm going into my demonstration. Let me see if I have any JS files in here. So we'll go by type. I don't know if I have any JS files in here. Let's see. Bear with me. I'm just seeing there. No, and then let's see. Oh, let's see. No, I don't have any JS files. But the reality is what will happen is you'll get a file that will be like imageviewer.js. So the first thing you need to do is you need to copy that into your web projects control folder. And where I often do that is into JavaScript. Now, you can do it on the file browser here, or you can go to the web projects control panel, go to the JavaScript files, and click Add File. And this will actually allow you to click on a JavaScript file, and it will move it into the project. Or alternatively, you can just merely drag and drop it into the JavaScript file in here. So you'll notice in here, oh, I do have one here. So I have something called JQCal. Must have been something I was playing with. So I've got this JavaScript library right in here called a .js file. And so actually, if I go in here and I go into JavaScript, into JQCal, you'll see that I have a series of JavaScript files that are in my project already. So that's step one. And step one is downloading, extracting, and putting the JS file in my web project there. Now, let's say I'm going to use this specific JavaScript file. So let's look at what it's called. It's called web2cal-2.0-min. Nightmare. Hate that, but sometimes they do that. So anyway, that's called there. So let's say I'm going to use that on this UX component. Well, there's a very important thing I need to do is if I'm going to reference that JavaScript in here, anywhere in terms of associating with the control or triggering it, I have to go to the properties of the UX. And then what I do is I can go to the search button up here for properties, go JavaScript, and you'll notice in there it says JavaScript linked files and say find property. And you'll notice down here there's a property called JavaScript linked files. So what I'm going to do is basically tell my UX control, hey, here is where you find this library of JavaScript functions in this file. So I go ahead and click on here and I just type it in. Now, remember where that was located at, and this is very important. You'll notice that I'm in JavaScript/JQCal is where that is. That's located. So when I put it in here, I actually have to go in here and go JavaScript/ and it's let me go back and look at that real quick. Bear with me. I usually like to put them there, but it's uppercase JavaScript/JQCal. So I go in here and I go JavaScript/JQCal/ and then the name of that thing is called Web2Cal-2.0. So I go Web2Cal-2.0-min.js. Okay. So, and I can actually edit it. If you have like multiple files, you can go in here and edit them from that standpoint here. So what I've done is I've basically told this UX control that where am I going to find my JavaScript files that I need to run those JavaScript files. And then I just put the name of the file, but also very important is where I'm going to find it. Now, when Alpha publishes this whole thing to your server, what it's going to do is it's going to publish all your files and also all of your JavaScript files in here to the server. So you'll notice that it's a relative address. I'm not putting in here, it's not C:, yada, yada, because it's really just going to say, where in relationship to this UX component is this thing? Oh, it's in the JavaScript folder. There's a subfolder called JQCal, and here's the command here. Now, once you've done that, you've basically told the UX where to go find that data. So when it runs, it basically goes in and loads up that JavaScript file and makes all of those functions available to your UX. So now, if I want to, in my JavaScript here, I can write my code to reference that JavaScript as I need to. I can also associate it with controls. I can do a whole bunch of other things from there. So I know this has been a bit long-winded for a straightforward question, but for people who are not familiar with JavaScript, know that there's a ton of really cool JavaScript libraries, menus, all these kind of things to extend your application. It comes with a JavaScript file or set of files that you need to copy into your web project so that it's available there. So when you publish it to the server, it's going to be available. And then in your UX, you have to go to Properties, to the JavaScript linked files and make sure to put the name of that file, including the JS, with where it's located in the file directory structure. And once you've done those two things, then that JavaScript that you've loaded is available. And there's some really cool ones. And in fact, if you don't mind, there's one I'd like to show real quick that I'd like to tell people is that if you're ever doing client-side date manipulation, why is that not doing it here? Let's go here. It's called Moment. If you're ever doing any type of client-side date manipulation, go check out moment.js. It is a simple, very small file that you load. It's literally 12K file. You basically would copy that file called moment.min.js. You put this name in the linked file, and then once you do that, you can have some really cool JavaScript commands to format dates. So you can say moment.format, and what it'll do is take the current date and format it into a really cool representation. And they have a whole bunch of other things like, for instance, locale support, adding dates, subtracting dates, figuring out what day of the week. So if you're doing any kind of client-side JavaScript manipulation of dates, go check that out. Highly valuable there. And all you have to do is copy that file in there, link that file in using this methodology here, and now that JavaScript is available for any of your commands. You could put it on a button, or you could put it on an on-blur event. So for instance, once that's in there, I can go to the test text button, go to the on-change event, and say, you know, moment, and it won't work in here right now, but I can go like, for instance, moment, geez Louise. Let's see, what was that called? Let's see. There we go. I can go moment.subtract date, and then I can say test, text, comma 2, etc. And therefore, it would do tract. It would also do a little bit of calendar operation, which are date manipulation, which is usually an enormous pain in the tail. So that's an example of how you can use off-the-shelf, really easy JavaScript libraries that are available. So again, long-winded, but check it out. Make sure that you've copied the file in. Make sure you go to the properties of the UX that's going to use that and set your JavaScript link files, and you are going to be golden.
Well, that's great, and thanks for showing us moment.js. Next question has to do with...
I use it all the time, really.
Cool. Next question has to do with client-side templating. And it's kind of a technical question, but I was wondering if you could just start with explaining client-side templating, if you can.
You know, let's make sure I understand what they're looking for.
Okay. So it's in the list control. They want to do client-side templating, which I understand that you can handle list control some JSON data and have it look.
Yes. Okay. So let me go ahead and show you how that looks. So let's go, and I'm going to go back to my web project control panel. I'm going to go ahead and go back up to my root, and I'm going to go to my web components. I'm going to create a new web component. So I'm at my web project control panel. I'm clicking new. I go to web component, and I go to UX because we want a UX form. That's where a list will live inside of it. Then I go in here. Now I go in here, and I say controls. I'm going to go and scroll down here, and you'll notice I have a list control. And so what I've done is I've scrolled down here. I click on the list control, and I'm going to call it list templating. Just giving it a name for our purposes here. Now I could go through the quick setup genie, which I've shown before, but I'm just going to go ahead and actually, if you want a really good demonstration, then check out last week. But I can go here. That's great. Then I'm going to go into my list. So this is an empty list. If I run this, you see a whole lot of nothing. You just see basically a bounding box there. So I'll go client-side templating _ UX. So I've saved this now. So let's go ahead and go into client list templating. So we open up list templating, and we're in the list genie. So you notice the first thing it's asking me is, where am I getting my data from? And often you're using SQL data. But you know, there are certain situations, which we're talking about right now, where the source of your data is JSON, which could be coming from a web service. And this is a great question, because the reality is more and more of the world is going to JSON data as the data that's being transferred around between different systems. So when you call another system, more often than not now, they're starting to transfer back a set of JSON to you, because it's a very easy to read, very easy to use formatting and structure of data. It's just I really like it a lot versus something like XML, which was sort of the important way it was done before. So in this case, I'm going to say I'm going to use a static set of data for this demonstration. So instead of pulling it from a database or a DBF file, I'm going to click it static. And so then I'm going to go down here to my static data. I'm going to click this. And you'll notice it's blank, so I could just start typing in some JSON data, but Alpha and the team has included some sample data. So I'm going to go in here, and you'll notice I have different samples. I have name and addresses. Name and address is a big data set, geographic data, etc., a whole bunch of cool stuff there. But in this case, I'm just going to do something simple, which is called name and addresses. And let's go, I want to do this. Let's go sample data. Where's the JSON? Oh, static data using JSON array. So you'll notice now, let me show you that just so you kind of get an understanding. If you're giving it static data, you can give it data in this format. This is the first row saying first name, pipe character, last name, pipe, city, state, and then the data. So this is one way you can pass static data into a list. But the other method, and what it will do is parse it. It will use the first row and say, oh, that's your headers, and then it will parse the data dependent upon that headers. But another method to do this is delete that, go to sample data, and then go to static dating JSON. Now, looks a little differently. You'll notice that it has an open bracket and close bracket, and then for each role, for each row, it has the first name, last name, city, state is the last things here. So very straightforward. And this is cool because it's very easy to read. If I want to add a new row there, I just have to simply go in here. I put a comma, hit here, and then I can say, you know, first name is John, last name is Doe, blah, blah, blah. So it's, you know, very human readable. I love JSON compared to XML, and so I've got my sample data in there. I'm going to click OK. Now what I can do is I can go to my fields here in my list layout and just notice how it's picked up those fields. I can sit here and go there and then preview the list. You'll notice then it creates a column or list of those data values, in this case static, that are available for me. Kind of boring, you know, useful for like a web, but not very good for doing something like, say, on a mobile platform. But the important thing for you to realize is that you can use JSON as a data source, and the list control is smart enough to analyze your JSON data. You'll notice I didn't put in there that I had a column first name, last name, city, and state. It automatically read that information from my data and then presented me with those fields in the builder saying, hey, guess what? Here are the fields I detected in your data. How do you want to lay them out from there? Now, if I want to, I can go back into my list properties and I can go into here, and instead of using a columnar layout, I can use a freeform layout. So you'll notice I went from columnar, freeform. Now when I go to my list layout, you'll notice something here. Instead of a set of columns, I can now lay this thing out any way I want to. So here's field first name, and I'll go BR, last name, break, city, break, state. And then I'll go preview list and see what it looks like. You'll notice now I have complete and total control over the templating, the formatting of that JSON data. So for instance, I can come in here and go, you know what? I want the first name. I want to say first name, and I want to say here last name. So I'm just putting some static text in there. And then I also want to go in here and go bold it, and I want to put stuff in here and go unbold it. Now when I do my preview of the list, you'll notice that the first name is bolded and the first name in every one of those rows. So this is the idea behind JSON client-side templating. So you have a set of JSON data, and now I am creating a template for that data. And you'll notice in here that each of these items here are surrounded by those the curly brackets. That's how I know it's a data item from there. And you'll notice that I have some other options, and I won't go into them today, but there's a lot of other options you can do it. And the important thing is you can just preview the list, so any change you make, you can immediately see the effect of that. And this gives you complete and total control. if you have a set of CSS, what you can do in CSS is assign that CSS and actually start styling this data to make it look a particular way by saying, for the first name, I want to associate CSS. Now, there's one other thing I want to kind of show you on this, which is really, really cool. There's actually two things I'd like to show you on there. One is we have the ability to create what's called a dynamic template. And so I'm going to click on there, and it gives you the instructions here. Basically, it allows you to put inside your template directives to alter the way the template is rendered. And this is applied on a row-by-row basis. So let me see if, actually, let me give that a try. And let's see the data. Let's look at this, preview this list. So you'll notice that I've got, well, I won't go into that much detail, but the name is John Smith. So let's say it's John. So what I can do in here is I can make a dynamic template where I can say, if the first name is equal to John, then I want to use one template. If it's not John, I want to use a different template. So a great example of this is, let's say you have a set of records that is like order status. And in that order status, you have some items that have been ordered and other ones that are not, have been shipped. You could literally go in here and say, for the items in the list that have been shipped, give it a different look, give it a different feel than the items that don't. You could hide fields, you can show fields, you can add different fields in it. So you can show like the ship date, in those kind of scenarios here. So this dynamic templating is very powerful because it all happens in JavaScript, so it's instantaneously. So the neat thing about this is the moment a new set of JSON is delivered to the list control will reapply this templating, and you'll see the immediate change here. And so versus, say, a grid, where a grid's kind of more of a structured fixed element, list controls give you the ability to modify that data using the template, and more importantly, allow you to have it be dynamic so that the user just sees things starting to change every once in a while, and they don't see big refreshes and other things like that. It's very, very smart there. And the last thing I want to show you on this as far as JSON templating is I can go here to the template tester, and you'll notice in here that it's taken some data right here. Here's my JSON data, and I'm only going to spend a few moments on here. And then I can go to my template here, and you can start putting in and testing your template with the JSON data. So let's see. So there you go. We can have the template there, and then we can actually. I guess I have some bad templating in here, so I'll have to find out why that is. Let me load an example right here. Okay, check this out. I just let me take a step back. I want to make sure I don't confuse people. And it's that in this situation here, you'll notice that I created a template using these placeholders here. So basically, I applied some HTML formatting. I could do dynamic templates using this. But to kind of go through this trial and error becomes kind of a pain. You have to adjust it, hit preview list. Then you got to go back, adjust it, hit preview list. Well, Alpha, the development team, added what's called a template tester where I can open it up here, and I can go ahead and go in this thing. I can go to my template, and I can go, hello there, and see what's happening on the right. The moment I modify the template, the moment I've changed the template, it's updating over here. So I'm getting real-time impact on this. So let's say I want to make that bold, and I want to make this one empty bold. Notice now that Fred is bolded here. So the cool thing about this is that this allows you to instantaneously see and build what you want it to see. And this allows you to include JavaScript in here. You can actually put in here in a command. So for instance, I could put in a if logical expression. I could put in all these other elements. So this allows me a very simple, easy way to do a sort of dynamically create my template. So let's say I want to go in here. I can go here, say copy, comma, and then let's see, reformat. Oh, I must put, let's see, and I think I have to actually go like this and maybe like this. There we go. Notice now I put in 2 records, and I'm seeing what the records are happening over here. Now, if something's wrong, obviously they're on the same row. So I go back to my template and say, oh, you know what? At the end of here, I want a BR. Check it out. Instantaneous results. So what I wanted to show you was, A, JSON is a form of data format. Notice that it's static, but this could be delivered from a function call, could be from a third-party API. Secondly, you can then use a free-form template to really give you any way you want to format this stuff. And third, which is very, very powerful, I mean, we could spend a whole day working on this template tester. I mean, it's extremely powerful. The ability to change every line based upon the value of the information in that line. So we're on there. So that is what's going on. So that is what I wanted to go ahead and show you guys here today. So I hope, a little bit long-winded as usual. I guess I hope you guys are getting used to it.
Great.
But I hope that makes sense in terms of that.
Excellent. So the question that we have about the templating is, can you only use JSON as the data source, or can you do this client-side templating if you have a SQL data source?
The answer is yes, you can. And let me go ahead and show you how that would be. Okay. I can collect, so let me go ahead and do that. I can go ahead and collect the SQL data source. And you know the reason why? Alpha converts all this data into JSON when it sends it to the list control. So the little secret is list control always has that. So let me go ahead and do, I'm in here and I've said, okay, instead of my other thing, I want this to be actually coming out of my data source. So I'm going to go SQL. I'm going to select my connection string. And again, for people who are new, this is telling me what database I want to go to. I'm selecting the database table. In this case, I want to select customers. Okay. Now I'm going to select the fields. So let me just select a few of them, okay? And so now I go to my fields I've got there. I can go to my list layout right now, and you'll notice that this is incorrect. So I'm going to click Go, and now I can go City, and Customer ID, and Company Name, and let me do a preview. Boom. Notice that it's doing the city, the company name. So as far as templating go, and you could use the template tester. Again, what you'll want to do is you'll get a sample of your data in there and then be able to do that. So a little bit different here if you don't have pre-made JSON data. The template tester, what you want to do is convert this, this data source into some data here. You can use this. But the reality is it's the same technique, including dynamic templating, is useful for both a SQL or JSON data, and the reason for that is that after this application server grabs the data from SQL, it converts it into JSON, then sends it to the list control in the field, and then you have complete control from a JSON templating status from there.
Excellent. Another is, sorry to keep harping on the templating questions, but they are coming in.
Hey, no, it's extremely powerful. One of the coolest tools that are available.
So the next question is, okay, this is cool, but can you do it with, you've done it now with a flat data source, can you do it with a relational data source, you know, a parent with child records?
Good point. And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Let me go back to static here, and let me go ahead and add some static data, and let me get rid of the static data. I can put sample data in here that's a hierarchical data. So again, for people who are new, bear with us here. But you'll notice in here, we now have hierarchical data. So we have the first name John, last name Smith, city, etc. But you'll now notice that we have this item called children, which has a subset of children that are associated with it. So it allows you to do hierarchical data sources, and this data is available within there to use it hierarchical. So when I go to build my list layout, I can put in, like, I can have the city, first name, last name, and then loop on the children, and it would show all the children under there. So it fully encompasses the capability of having hierarchical data sources. Now, when you do the SQL from here, I'd have to double check how you would define the hierarchical structure. I'd have to look into that in terms of how you would do the same thing with a hierarchical pull from SQL. I think you have to do a join, and then it translates it from there, but I'd have to double check on that. But the bottom line is it can handle hierarchical data in the formatting so that you can structure like a parent-child relationship and then present it as such.
Great, excellent. Let me just grab the rest of my questions. You had talked, I think it was last week, about Evernote. In fact, I think it was part of your Channel Cards thing. And you said that you use it, in fact, to store code segments. One of the users was wondering, he was just curious, how do you organize them, like personally? How do you organize your in Evernote categories to keep track of your segments? Or
Well, okay. The answer is I don't.
You
But,
did, I know. Exactly. We're asking people to look into your messy top drawer or something like
I
that, aren't
am.
we? I'm sorry.
No. I'm a C personality, so I tend to be quote unquote analytical. Although I'm probably a failed analytical person there. The reality, what I love about Evernote is that you can tag things, so you can add tags things there. So, for instance, you can I'll do it. Put in your database. Standard, okay. So you can see I've got a ton of stuff in here. Let's see, let's go standard database. There we go. Okay, so here's a great example. I have the standard database script, and it's Alpha X basic. So I have a set of dimensioning the components, setting up the connection string and stuff along those lines. And I really have not tagged it. I could click here and add tags to kind of structure my stuff, but I realized that who cares? I just need to know how to search for it. And since the system is full text enabled searching, I can go in here and put something like that. So I know one for okay, here's an example of that, is that there's a command I really called evaluate _ string. So you'll notice that I put in the command that I remember, and it pulls up everything I pasted in there with it. So this is in the case of here. Oh, it didn't. It snippet there. Evaluate. Let me go here. Wait, sorry. So I really just shove stuff in there, and then search for the term I think I know it is, and it puts in there. Now, granted, if you start tagging, it will be much smarter about organizing your items and putting it into notebooks and things like that. But the reality is I spend most of my time just copying and pasting stuff in here just because I know in the future I'm going to need this again. And then all I have to do is go in here and say, okay, copy, go into my thing and save. Now, Alpha has a built-in library, and this is pretty cool, is that actually Alpha has what's called a built-in code library. So if you're using something over and over, literally every day, then I would use the methodology of adding it to the code library, which we can show in a future event. Because the neat thing is it's right there in the code editor. I just right-click on it, go to the code library, and I can say, for instance, let's do a fade-out message. So there's a little piece of JavaScript that does a fade-out message in a placeholder. It's something that you may not have experienced, but he's done there. But notice I didn't have to go search for it. I didn't have to do anything. But I use this one often, like literally once a day I'm putting this command in some script there. For things that I use a little less often, but I want to keep in hand, I put it in Evernote, and then just I can kind of, in my memory, I go, oh, it has to do with this and that. And what's neat is that it does like index every piece of text, so I just got to get close enough to show it, and it will show a set of things there. Now, the other thing I really like about Evernote is that if I'm on, like, let's say it's moment.js, and I'm in my web browser here, I've got the Evernote Clipper, and I wonder if I have it on this one right here. I usually use it on the other side, but you can put in what are called plugins into your web browser, and what you can do is literally click a button, and what it will do is it will take this web page, grab all the content, and shove it into Evernote. So if I remember this moment.js, I don't have to actually remember this URL. I can literally have all of this information in here. So I wonder, let's check it out. Let's go moment.js. Oh, nope, I didn't paste something in there. So HTML_X, let me see. Now, I'm losing on all those today, so not very exciting there. So, but what I highly recommend on this is that, the neat thing about Evernote is that you can just shove everything in there, and it's full text indexed, and even it will take images and OCR them and actually pull out. So if you like have an image of some code, it will literally OCR that and make it indexable and searchable by text. And so I don't really categorize stuff. I kind of started to do that, but then I realized, most of the time I really didn't need it. But as you can see, I guess I could use it because it would make it easier to say, okay, I just want to see code snippets involved with database. I only want to see code snippets involved with JavaScript or with the list control or with the text box or this. And the thing that benefits me is that with these tags, then I can just click to add a tag, and then I can search on those tags pretty reasonably within the system. You know, I can use the tags to kind of categorize things. And I can actually create, I think, what's called smart folders, where I can say, put in this one folder all of these items that are tagged a certain way. And it really, you know, again, probably make me more productive, but I just haven't had a chance to do that.
Excellent. Couple other questions here. Let's see one that will fit into the time allotted. Here's a fairly quick one. You had mentioned that you can use a JSON or I think you did mention a JSON or an XML document as a data source for a list component. Can you just show us quickly how that's done? So
you can. The answer is sort of. You can use JSON.
JSON
is the primary there. Yeah, but when you go to a list control, let me get rid of this so it doesn't throw an error. Okay. If I go to my list control, my different data sources are SQL, and again, it does the SQL pull and turns it into JSON. Same thing with DBF. But I can also do what's called a custom. And what a custom is you actually define a XBasic function, and then what it's expecting out of the XBasic function is data that the system can then use. So what you can do is you can create a function that makes a web API call to go out and grab some XML, but then it's your responsibility to translate that XML into something that the list control can handle. And the reality is Alpha actually does have a bunch of XML built-in commands that are available. But the idea is, let's say I wanted to create a list and I go get XML is the name of my function. And then you'll notice down here in the left-hand corner it says show XBasic functions. Actually, I'm sorry, let me click here, go get XML. I can get a sample of the XBasic function. So I type in the name of my function, go get XML. I click here, and then you'll notice it's filled this in here, and then it says sample XBasic function, and they've got a couple of them, but I'll create a simple example. And here is the XBasic function template that you can use to kind of create your own one. So you'll notice in here that, and it's got a lot of data. Actually, let me just do this one. Let's do a very simple one, template only, okay? And show there what it looks like. Okay, so here's a very simple example of it. And it's got a lot of text to tell you how to do it. But the bottom line is, in your function, you have to define either that piped delimited list or hand it back JSON. So basically the function returns either that pipe data or a nicely formatted JSON data, either one. And this is actually a little easier to manipulate to begin with. Over time you'll get used to JSON and starting using this. So what you would do is in here you would make that call to that other party, grab that XML data, and then extract the data and rewrite it in this format. And then once you've done that, then everything else works the same. So if you're going after XML data, you'll have to come up with a method to go out and, you're going to have to use this method to basically use a custom function and make a call to that service, grab that XML data. Now, it could be you're calling to your own database, or you're calling to a file on your hard drive. It doesn't have to be on a third-party service. So let's say you had a database where one of the columns has XML data just from a history standpoint. Then what you could do is you could simply take and make a call into the database inside this custom function and then grab that XML, translate it, and turn it into something that the list control can use.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have a question. It's a question just about the IDE, the interface itself, and that is when you're building a UX component, there's a little green / button up at the top which lets you comment out controls that you've decided you don't want, or so you can put in comments to describe what's going on.
Right.
Okay.
For people who are new to that,
yep.
Just if you'll see on the screen, I've got a text box here.
Yep.
Up here, I've got a // I can click on this and say, this is a cool control. And you'll notice right here it says this is a cool control. So once you get a very complicated set of components in there, you can start putting hints and information. This is very good in case someone else has to pick up your control and start working with it. It's commented within so they can literally read what each control is doing.
Okay, now the question is, can you change the indentation of those comments? Apparently someone's showing that at the conference.
Oh, cool. That is a really good point.
Label position, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, this is label. That's for this text
box.
That's
for that one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, the only thing I know you can do on here is that when I'm editing this, let me go ahead and edit that comment. I can go in here, and I can go HTML, and I can edit the HTML comment, and I can put this in there and use any HTML command I want to. So, so notice I put in a return in there. But I could also put in, let's say we want to bold this thing. So potentially I think you could, in this situation, is create a like an indentation for this using HTML, but I'm not sure if that actually will work. So it must be something, another setting that I'm not aware of on how that works.
All right.
Yeah. Stump me.
Finally.
Good job.
Yeah, all right, excellent. Just a question about, actually I've got a couple here. Session variables. Do you have a second or so to talk about those?
Yeah.
How do you create them? How do you use them? The high-level overview. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to give a real quick and dirty overview. Is that what a session variable is first is that it is a server-side entity. And this is very important. The most important thing I'm going to say is session variables are server-side entities, meaning that they live on the server and they're talked to on the server. Now, there is a way to expose those so that your JavaScript can look at session variables, and that's beyond the scope of today. It would take a little bit longer. We can actually set that up as a next session to kind of go in how a session variable works. But remember, session variables are server-side entities, things. And the cool thing about session variables is think of them as global variables for a session. So when a user's logged in and has a session, the Alpha application server sets up sort of a scratch pad for you. And it has this thing called a session variable. And what you can do is put things on that session variable, and for as long as that person is logged in, that session variable is used for that session. And the important thing about it is that if I have 3 people logged into the system, each of those people have their own session variables. So it's not one session, there's like one master one, but each session, each sort of logged in person will have their own session variable. And the cool thing about that is that anywhere in your system you can always refer to a session variable if it has been created. So for instance, I'm going to go into here. Let's go ahead and do this from this standpoint. I'm going to show you, I've got 2 minutes. Let's see if we can do this here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new button here. And this will be a little quick, so bear with me. And so I'm going to click this button. And this button is going to be show session variable. Okay? And when I click this button, I'm going to run a little AJAX callback. And this is going to go real fast for people, so watch it on the replay. So set show. I'm setting up and running a XBasic callback because remember, we're talking about the server. So I'm copying that. I'm going to open there. I'm going to paste it. Click OK. Click OK. There. OK. So first thing I'm going to do is go into my server side. So I'm going to go to the onDialog initialize. And what this does, this runs whenever this thing, this event is run every time. So I'm going to go session.weeklywebinar is equal to hey there. Okay. So notice all I did was say session.weeklywebinar. So session is the sort of my scratch pad, and then I'm dynamically creating something called weekly webinar, and I'm putting information in there. And session variables are character types. So if it's numerics, you may have to manipulate it later. So let's do that real simple there. So now when I run this working preview, nothing happens so far because nothing's happening. But in the behind the scenes, when this thing loaded up, it went and set a session variable for me on the back end. So now I'm going to go to my XBasic function, that one I just created, and I'm going to go dim message as C. Message is equal to session dot weekly webinar. Bear with me. Okay. And then I'm going to go show session variable equal to alert. Bear with me, it's code, don't freak out. And I'll explain it. Okay, so let's go through that real quick. What happens is when I start this UX, I go ahead and load into the session variable weekly webinar, hey there. Then I have a button on my session that I click on this, and this is going to make a call back to the server, and it's going to run this function called show session variable. And in that, I'm going to go ahead and grab that session variable, put it into message, and then send back a command to the user interface displaying that message. So the cool thing about this is that that message exists nowhere on the client. It exists only in the server, and so that's why. And let's see if I screwed it. Oh, I did screw that up, real. It's so that will work there. And then I'm going to do a live preview. Okay, so behind the scenes, it set that session variable. Now let's show it. Check it out. Notice, hey there is not in the client anywhere, because what happened is when I hit live preview, it initialized the system, it loaded this UX, there must be some there. Behind the scenes, it took that message, hey there, put it into the session variable, and then when I clicked show session variable, it makes a call back to the server, grabs that message, and then sends a message back to hey there. So the cool thing about this is that you can set a whole bunch of session variables, and you could have 20, 30 grids, you could have 20, 30 UXs. I mean, the cool thing about a grid, and let me show you this real quick, is that let's say I set this session variable instead of weekly webinar, and I'll finish this up in a moment. Let's say I put session.client ID is equal to 5. So I've stored who this client is, or user ID is there. Then if I have a grid component, and I'll just grab any grid component I have here, I can go into the query here, I can create what's called an argument, and I'll call it user ID, and I can get that from the variable session.userid. Okay, so I went really quick there, but what it is that I can set these session variables, and now I can define an argument, and then in my filter criteria, I can say, you know, user ID is equal to user ID, and what it will do is it will grab that session variable that I've set and use that in my filtering. So that's the #1 way people use session variables, is that when someone logs into the system, you capture their company ID, their user ID, etc. And then anywhere in your system, you can refer to that to filter lists, filter grids, to set initial values of controls, etc. So I know that was probably a little bit more, but wanted to give you a feel that session variables are server-side. They live on the server. They're accessed on the server. You can, and we'll talk about this in a future one, you can actually publish session variables so that JavaScript can use them. But think of them as server-side entities. That way you won't get into trouble. And the cool thing about them, they're available to all of your controls during that person's session, so you can use them anywhere else to refer to this kind of scratch pad of data that's important for that, like who the user ID, what their company ID is, etc.
All right, I know we're actually 3 minutes over time, but I want to leave everyone with this comment that someone had just written in saying they actually found the solution to the comment indent problem in UX properties. In UX property, you go to UX properties and you should find it in the advanced section. It's called comment indent. So properties, advanced, or comment indent.
There we go.
Thank you, Sarah, for pointing that out.
I see. So you can say like 20
exactly,
or whatever it happens to be.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
That's great. Well, we are over time. I want to thank everyone who participated, attended. I want to thank you, Dion. And I hope to see all of you guys at future webinars, especially next Wednesday. Take care. Goodbye.